It was during Truth or Dare at the alumni reunion, and the former campus queen was wasted. Someone asked her the most despicable thing she'd ever
done.
She pointed across the booth at me, giggling hysterically. I used his phone to delete his poor little girlfriend's desperate plea for help while he was in the shower, and then I texted back, "Drop dead." You guys wouldn't believe it. That pauper waited outside in the rain all night. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. Laughter erupted through the private room, except for the man seated at the head of the table. The crystal wine glass in his hand shattered with a sickening crunch. Blood mixed with red wine streamed down his fingers. He stared at me, his eyes bloodshot, like he was seconds from murder. I calmly slid a napkin toward him. "Mr. Reese, you should wipe up. It's soiled. Some things, once stained, can never be washed clean." The Carlisle Club, Manhattan's most exclusive private membership space, was entirely booked for the evening. The word was a newly minted venture capital titan worth 9 figures had returned from overseas and wanted to flaunt his success to his old college crowd. When the manager handed me the gold-embossed wine list, his eyes held a fleeting, unreadable pity. "Scout," Mr. Davies said, his voice low. "It's the V888 suite tonight. If you don't want to go, I can assign someone else." I adjusted my ill-fitting server uniform, offering him a faint smile. "It's fine, Mr. Davies. That's our highest spending suite. The corkage fees alone will net me a decent bonus. I need the cash, you know." He sighed, patted my shoulder, and walked away. I pushed open the door to the V888 suite, the heat wave hitting me instantly, thick with the scent of expensive perfume, Cuban cigars, and something else, the dizzying, nauseating smell of burning money. In the center of the plush leather sofa sat the man I hadn't seen in 7 years. He had changed completely. Gone was the memory of the fiercely proud, intensely stubborn boy in a faded hoodie and threadbare jeans. In his place sat a polished, cold-eyed business mogul, exuding the effortless authority of a true power player. He was leaning back, listening to someone next to him, a detached, almost bored smirk playing on his lips. And nestled against him was the woman who had stolen him from me all those years ago, Genevieve "Jen" Sinclair. Jen was draped in a custom white Chanel dress, her neck flashing with a diamond necklace that caught the ambient light like a beacon. She swirled the contents of her wine glass, radiating the smug arrogance of a proud swan. "Oh, Holden's back in the States, mainly for me, of course. He's shifting his company headquarters because, well, we're finally getting engaged." A chorus of sycophantic praise immediately erupted. The campus beauty and the brain-aim match made in heaven. "Holden, you're on the cover of Forbes now. Jen, you lucked out. It's the ultimate turnaround story. Unlike some people who traded up for cash and bailed, bet they're regretting that decision now, huh?" The intentional barb hung in the air, and for a silent second, every eye in the room pivoted to me, where I stood in the corner, expertly uncorking a bottle. I felt nothing. Like a numb marionette, I sliced the foil with a corkscrew, twisted the worm, and slowly pulled the
stopper.
Bordeaux left bank. Optimal pour after 20 minutes of decanting. I poured the breathing wine into the massive crystal goblet. In front of Holden Reese, my movements flawless, professional. Holden finally raised his head. His stare was a devastating cocktail: contempt, disgust, raw hatred, and a subtle flicker of something deeper in arrogant indifference. He didn't reach for the glass, allowing me to hold it suspended in the air. My wrist, fatigued from balancing the heavy serving tray, gave a tiny, involuntary tremor. "Scout Davis." He finally spoke, his voice a low, gravelly baritone. "I heard you dropped out of NYU before graduation."
"What
happened? Did your trust fund boyfriend get bored and toss you out? Now you're scraping by, serving drinks in places like this." The room fell silent, the audience waiting for the spectacle. Jen theatrically covered her mouth, feigning shock as she looked at me. "Oh my God, It is Scout. How are you? Dressed like that? Honey, if you're really hard up, just tell me. Even though you threw Holden over for money, we're still old classmates. I'd be happy to arrange something for you, maybe a janitorial position at my father's firm. She deliberately lingered on the phrase, threw Holden over. For money. The whispers of judgment started. A fine, biting spray. Serves her right. Holden was so devoted back then. That's karma. Look at the CEO, he is now billions. And her? Waiting tables. The tides turn, 30 years down the road. I listened to the stinging comments with a blank expression, as if they were discussing a stranger. 7 years. I had built a fortress around my heart. I'd worked in the darkest corners of this city, washing dishes in scorching kitchens, moving inventory in freezing cold storage, being splashed with drinks by drunk patrons, and being screamed at by landlords calling me a beggar.
Dignity.
That broken thing had been pulverized into dust. On that rainy night, 7 years ago. Mr. Reese, your wine. I repeated, my voice steady. Holden fixed his gaze on my eyes, clearly searching for a hint of remorse, shame, or even tears. He was disappointed. My eyes contained nothing but endless fatigue and a chilling, vacant numbness. My indifference seemed to infuriate him. He suddenly raised his hand and slammed it down, violently knocking the wine glass out of my grasp. This vintage is too common, Holden said, pulling a crisp linen napkin from his pocket to wipe his hand. His eyes were arctic. Get me something else. A bottle with some real age. Something like that night, 7 years ago. He was humiliating me. 7 years ago, he was still a penniless college student who'd saved up for 3 months to buy a single bottle of cheap, corner store red wine for my birthday. We drank it straight from the bottle on the cold grass of the campus quad, our faces flushed, promising to stay together forever. Now, he was using that same memory to remind me of the price of betrayal. Jen giggled, playing along. Oh, Holden, don't be so hard on her. That wine costs a fortune. She couldn't pay for the broken glass if she sold everything she owns. Just apologize to Mr. Reese, Scout, wipe up the mess, and we'll let it go. I knelt, retrieved a cloth, and began to carefully blot the scarlet stain from the expensive Persian rug. A tiny shard of crystal glass embedded itself in my fingertip, a sharp, familiar stab of pain. I didn't flinch. I merely calculated in my head. That's my commission.
Gone.
Plus the cost of the glass. Tonight's work, maybe. Half a month's wages is now a loss. This was my life now. No romance, no poetry, only the brutal arithmetic of bills I couldn't pay and debts I couldn't outrun. As for love, that was a luxury only the rich could afford. My apologies, Mr. Reese. I finished cleaning the last trace of wine, stood up, and maintained my humble, subservient posture. I will inform the manager to send up the finest bottle we have. Holden looked at the small bead of blood welling up on my finger. His pupil constricted momentarily, but the mask of icy indifference returned instantly. Get out. I didn't get out. Because Mr. Davies told me the client in V888 had specifically requested my service for the duration of the night. If I left, I'd lose the mandatory $2,000 tip and potentially have my base pay docked. I desperately needed the money. My mother's dialysis next month hadn't been covered yet, and the landlord was already texting about next quarter's
Rent.
So I went to the restroom to quickly bandage the cut, and then I returned to that suffocating, velvet-lined suite. When I pushed the door open again, the atmosphere had shifted. 3 rounds of drinks in, the impeccably tailored elite had started to drop their pretenses, revealing the ugly core of humanity beneath. They were playing truth or dare. It was a trite, yet endlessly effective game, especially fueled by alcohol, the perfect tool to rip the veneer off human decency. The marble table was littered with empty bottles. Louis. 13, Remy Martin, Ace of Spades. The combined cost of those bottles was enough for me to buy a closet-sized studio apartment in the outer boroughs. Jen was clearly drunk. Her cheeks were flushed, and she was practically draped over Holden, her eyes hazy, almost feverish with triumph. She was the star of the night, the biggest winner. The prospect of marrying Holden and becoming the envied Mrs. Reese had made her reckless, almost giddy with hubris. All right. Next round. The class president, an awkward man named Sam, slurred his words. Who gets it this time? The empty Magnum bottle spun quickly across the slick marble table, making a grating, unpleasant sound. Everyone held their breath, their eyes glued to the bottle's neck. Slowly it stopped. The bottle pointed directly at Jen. Ooh, dash. Jackpot for the campus queen. Truth or dare? Jen let out a throaty laugh, waving a dismissive hand. Truth. This princess has nothing to hide. Sam rubbed his hands together with a malicious grin, his eyes bouncing between me and General. He was clearly looking to stir up trouble. Fine, let's go with a juicy one. Jen, what is the most despicable, most heartless thing you've ever done in your entire life? The question dropped into the room like a stone. They were all adults who didn't have a few dirty secrets. But this was a game, and the point was the shock value. Holden, who had been resting his eyes, merely lifted an eyelid at the question, offering no objection. In his mind, Jen was merely spoiled and occasionally petty, but certainly not capable of true malice. Jen let out a small burp, her gaze suddenly slicing through the crowd to land on me, where I was standing in the corner pouring water for a guest. A vile, triumphant smile curled her lips. The alcohol had dulled her judgment and amplified the jealousy and spite buried deep in her heart. The most despicable thing, you ask? Jen stumbled to her feet, her finger aimed directly at me. It was 7 years ago, the night of that huge thunderstorm. I went to Holden's shabby little rental. At the mention of 7 years ago, my hand convulsed, and the hot water in the carafe nearly sloshed over the rim. Holden's body, too, stiffened almost imperceptibly. Jen burst into hysterical laughter, as if recounting the most hilarious anecdote. Holden was in the shower. His cheap phone was on the table. And guess what? This pauper, Scout, texts him. And guess what she said? Haha. She wrote, Holden, please save my dad. I beg you. I only need 50,000. I'll be your servant forever. Tisk, TSK. So pathetic, so utterly desperate. I thought Holden is so brilliant, he can't be saddled with this kind of trash. He belongs with me, in the big leagues, not dragged down into the mud by some bottom feeder. So, she paused for dramatic effect, her eyes gleaming with a manic spark. I did Holden a favor. I deleted her frantic text and then I texted back from his phone. Just 2 words. Drop dead. Ha 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 ha. You should have seen it. The pauper actually waited outside in the rain all night. I watched her from the window, soaked like a drowned rat, watching her sink to her knees in despair. It was the best laugh I've ever had. Seriously, didn't I do a great thing? If I hadn't done that, how could Holden have shed that anchor? How could he have become the man he is today? Holden, you should be thanking me. Jen's voice was cut off by the sharp sound of shattering glass. Holden had crushed his wine glass with his bare hand. The fragments were deeply embedded in his palm. Blood, mixed with red wine, dripping onto the pristine white tablecloth, a horrifying tableau. But he seemed completely oblivious to the pain. He was staring intensely at Jen, his normally cold eyes now streaked with crimson veins. What did you say? Jen, still basking in her own cruelty, hadn't registered the danger. I said, I helped you get rid of that poor Dash. Shut up. Holden violently overturned the mahogany coffee table in front of him. The deafening crash made Jen scream, the shock sobering her instantly. She looked up in terror at the man towering over her, who looked like an enraged lion. Oh, Holden, what is it? I was just kidding. Kidding? Holden stumbled to his feet, closing the distance between them. Are you saying that 7 years ago, she didn't run off with Dean Kincaid, the rich guy?
She didn't text me saying
She was leaving because I was poor? Are you saying she was in a hospital? She was begging me for help. His voice grew louder, culminating in a raw, animalistic
roar.
Jen was so terrified by his presence that she sank back onto the sofa. Holden didn't even spare her another glance. He spun around, his attention locked on me in the corner. Scout. He choked out my name, a sound like a sob, tearing from his throat. Is she telling the truth? That night, were you waiting for me? The entire room was paralyzed, everyone too terrified to even breathe. I set the water carafe down. I looked at the truth that had taken 7 years to surface, and my heart felt frighteningly empty. Too late. It was truly, devastatingly too late. I pulled a tissue from my uniform pocket, walked over, and held it out to him. Mr. Reese, wipe your hand. It's bleeding everywhere.
It's dirty.
Holden ignored the tissue. He lunged and grabbed my wrist. Answer me, Scout. Tell me this isn't real. I looked into his bloodshot eyes and smiled, gently. And what if it is? Holden Reese. Holden's hand trembled as he gripped me, his gaze desperately scouring my face. He was looking for any trace of a lie. He could have accepted hatred, revenge, or even me fabricating this story to torment him. Anything but the truth. Because if this was the truth, then every ounce of the hatred, every hour of grinding work, every drop of motivation that had driven him out of poverty for 7 years had been built on a lie. A complete, devastating joke. If you were in trouble, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you come to me? Why did you send that text saying you'd fallen in love with someone else? I looked at his broken composure and felt nothing but cold, bitter irony. Call you? I let out a light, humorless laugh. Holden, I called you 37 times that night. 37 times. The first call was when the doctor gave the critical condition notice. You didn't pick up. The 10th call was after I was kicked out of my relatives' house, after begging them for money. You sent it to voicemail. The 20th call was when I was completely soaked in the storm, with nowhere else to turn. Your phone was off. The last time, right after sending that plea, was when I received your 2-word response. Drop dead. I took a slow, deep breath, the memories flooding back. Sharp and painful. You asked why I didn't come to you? I did. I stood outside your crummy apartment all night. I knew. You were home. The light was on. I saw Jen's silhouette on the curtain, watched the two of you laughing. I kept thinking if he would just come down and see me, if he'd just tell me he was broke, or just hold me and tell me not to be afraid, I could have kept fighting. But you didn't. You told me to drop dead. Holden's face was ashen. He released my wrist and stumbled back 2 steps. It wasn't me. I never would. He clutched his head, groaning in agony. My phone was missing that day. I thought I'd lost it.
Jen
later told me you'd left with Dean Kincaid, that you texted, saying you were done with the poor life. He violently swung around to face Jen, his gaze predatory. My phone. You took my phone. Jen was now utterly hysterical. She had never seen Holden lose control like this. He had always been relentlessly composed. Holden, let me explain. Jen was weeping hysterically, attempting to grab his sleeve. I loved you so much back then. I didn't want you to be dragged down by her. Her father was a financial black hole. I was protecting your future. Protecting my future? Holden backhanded her, the slap cracking across Jen's face. She fell directly to the floor, blood immediately pooling in the corner of her mouth. A wave of shocked gasps swept through the private room, but no one dared intervene. You were protecting yourself. Holden's eyes were blood shot, his finger pointed at Jen, trembling violently. How dare you make that decision for me?
how dare you?
Delete that text. Do you know that was life-saving money? Do you know what you did to her? Holden went completely insane, sweeping the remaining wine bottles off the table, sending glass and liquor cascading to the floor. He remembered that night 7 years ago. He got out of the shower, couldn't find his phone. Jen was sitting on the sofa, looking slightly flustered, claiming she didn't know where it was. He dismissed it. The next day, the entire campus was abuzz with rumors. That scout had run off with the rich guy, Dean Kincaid. He'd gone to confront me, only to see me walking away from the registrar's office after dropping out. He believed I was guilty, that I was ashamed. Scout. Holden turned back to me, then dropped to his knees with a heavy thud directly onto the scattered shards of broken
glass.
His knees were instantly punctured, and blood soaked through the expensive fabric of his suit pants. But he didn't feel it. He crawled forward, reaching out to grasp the hem of my skirt.
I'm so sorry.
I truly didn't know. If I had known, I would have sold my organs. Given blood, I would have saved him. How could I have ever let you face that alone? Your dad? How is he now? I'll fly him to the best hospital. Hire the top specialists. I'll pay any amount. He spoke frantically, his eyes gleaming with a desperate, pathetic hope that money could somehow reverse time. I looked down at the man sobbing hysterically at my feet, my expression remaining perfectly serene. Some mistakes can be corrected, but some mistakes cost a life. Holden, save your breath. I cut his fantasy short, my voice icy. My dad died. Holden's body immediately froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. A week after that rainy night, I continued, my tone flat as if describing the weather. We couldn't cover the surgical fees, and he missed the critical window for intervention. He lingered in the ICU for 7 days, and he died in excruciating pain. Right before the end, he was clutching my hand, telling me not to blame you. He said Holden was a good boy. Don't hold the money against him. You want to save him, Holden? Can you save him in the grave? The mention of my father inevitably caused a painful, sharp ache in my already ravaged heart. My memory was instantly yanked back to that suffocating summer 7 years ago. Holden and I were juniors in college. He was the golden boy of the finance department. I was the top student in foreign languages. We were the perfect campus couple, poor but blissfully
Happy.
We studied in the library until closing, shared $5 street food, and dreamed of the future. He swore he would make a fortune, buy a huge house, move my dad in with us, and buy me the biggest diamond
ring.
The air around us was so sweet it felt sticky. Until the phone call that shattered everything. Scout, your dad collapsed at the construction site.
It's a
cerebral hemorrhage. Get to the city hospital now. I rushed to the hospital like a madwoman, only to see my father unconscious, tubes everywhere. The doctor's voice was cold and clinical. Immediate surgery is required. We need a $50,000 deposit, and follow-up care will be at least $200,000. $50,000. For the Holden Reese of today, that was the cost of a mediocre bottle of wine. For the scout of 7 years ago, it was an insurmountable mountain. My father was a day laborer. We had no savings. I called every relative, enduring endless scorn and rejection. Scout, I would, but you know your cousin just bought a
house.
Listen, a hemorrhage is a money pit. Even if he lives, he'll be paralyzed. Maybe you should just let nature take its course. The cruel indifference of family and friends was exposed. In its starkest form, I was utterly desperate. Finally, I thought of Holden. I knew he was poor. He lived off scholarships. But I knew he'd just received a significant academic grant, plus the money he'd saved tutoring. He could probably scrounge together 10 or 20,000. Even if it wasn't enough, just having him by my side, helping me think, would have made the sky stop falling. I called him. No answer. Still no answer. The rain outside intensified, threatening to swallow the entire city. I stood at the end of the sterile hospital hallway, watching the lightning flash, my fingers trembling as I typed the text. Holden, please save my dad. I beg you. I only need $50,000. I'll be your servant forever.
Send.
I stared at the screen, every second stretching into an
eternity.
ding. My phone buzzed. I swiped the screen with frantic hope, only to see the words that plunged me into an abyss of ice. Drop dead. Don't bother me. In that instant, I heard the sound of my entire world collapsing. I couldn't believe Holden sent that.
He couldn't do that to me.
I bolted out of the hospital like a lunatic, running through the torrential rain to his rental apartment. I was drenched, one shoe lost, my soul bleeding from sharp stones. I saw the warm yellow light glowing from the second floor window. I saw two shadows on the curtain. One was Holden. The other, judging by the shape, was
Jen.
They were close, maybe embracing, maybe kissing. In that moment, every last vestige of my courage evaporated. It was all a lie. All the intense devotion was fake. In the face of reality, the love of two poor students was fragile, worthless. I stood under the apartment building all night, rain mixed with tears, tasting like bitter salt in my mouth. At dawn, I dragged my stiff, chilled body away. I went to the club, knelt before the rich jerk, Dean Kincaid, who had been harassing me. I crushed my dignity underfoot and exchanged it for $50,000 for the surgery. But it was too late. The surgery was performed, but due to the delay, the post-op complications were severe. My father struggled for a week and then passed away. After the funeral, I dropped out of school. I had to pay back Dean Kincaid, pay back the relatives, and survive. I disappeared completely from Holden's world. I heard he searched for me like a madman, heard he was consumed by hatred, heard he swore he would become rich enough to make me regret leaving him. But none of it mattered to me anymore. The atmosphere in the room was suffocatingly heavy. How could this happen? How could this happen? He kept repeating the phrase, a question directed at me, and at himself. I looked at him, and a brief flicker of vengeful satisfaction
Crossed my mind.
but mostly, there was a profound sadness. Holden Reese, do you know how I've spent the last 7 years? I crouched down, forcing him to look at my hands. These hands were once pampered, never allowed to lift a heavy object, never even allowed to twist a bottle cap by him. Now, they were covered in rough calluses, scarred from burns, the knuckles swollen and deformed from long hours in freezing water. To pay off the debt, I worked 3 jobs a day. 4 in the morning, kneading dough in a bakery. Delivery.
Person by day.
Working at places like this by night. In winter, I had bleeding chilblains, but I still had to wash thousands of dishes in cold water. I couldn't afford to go to a clinic when I was sick. I delivered food with a 104-degree fever, collapsing on the sidewalk once, where people thought I was dead. And what were you doing? I stared directly into his eyes, forcing each syllable out. You were in the States on a full scholarship, living in a nice apartment, driving a new car. You were being comforted by Jen, listening to her lies. You were falling in love with her. And late at night, you were hating your poor ex-girlfriend, swearing to make her pay for the day she left you for money. Holden's pupils dilated violently. He coughed up a mouthful of blood, internal bleeding caused by sheer, agonizing stress. He didn't notice. He reached a trembling hand toward mine, wanting to touch it, but withdrew just before contact. He felt dirty. Not that I was dirty, but that he was. I'm sorry, Scout. I'm so sorry. Beyond those 3 words, he seemed to have lost the ability to communicate. Jen, having recovered from the initial shock, knew she was completely ruined. She scrambled forward, grabbing Holden's trouser leg, shrieking, Holden, don't listen to her sob story. Even if I deleted the text, she still slept with Dean Kincaid.
She's trash.
She'd do anything for money. She doesn't deserve you. Shut up. Holden whipped around, his eyes blazing with homicidal fury. If you hadn't sent that text, she never would have gone to Dean Kincaid. You forced her. You killed her father. You ruined her life. Jen, I'll kill you. I'll kill you. Holden's fingers clamped around Jen's throat, squeezing tighter and tighter. Jen's eyes rolled back, and she choked, her face turning purple. The classmates panicked, rushing forward to pull them apart. Mr. Reese, calm down. Murder is a felony. Jen was wrong, but she doesn't deserve to die. Let go. You're going to kill her. In the ensuing chaos, I stood utterly detached. The triumph Jen felt earlier was now reduced to abject
Panic.
Holden's previous arrogance had been utterly transformed into pathetic desperation. I checked the wall clock. It was 2 a.m. Time to clock out. I stood up, brushed the dust from my skirt, and addressed the hysterical knot of people. Mr. Reese, since you seem to have a private domestic dispute to resolve, 3 be leaving now. Also, the fee for the private suite, the liquor, and the large broken crystal glass totals $186,000. Will that be card or cash? Holden released Jen, who collapsed onto the floor, gasping and coughing violently. Holden turned, staring at me in complete disbelief. Scout, at a moment like this, you're talking about money? His eyes were full of hurt. What else? Should I be talking about feelings? Holden, what feelings are left for us to discuss? There are. Of course, there are. Holden scrambled off the floor and stumbled toward me, trying to embrace me. I still love you, Scout. I never forgot you for 7 years.
I
hated you because I loved you too much. Let's start over. Please. I'm rich now. I can give you the best life. I can compensate you. What is $180,000? I'll give you 18 million. 180 million. Just come back to me. I stepped back, evading his embrace. Don't touch me. I wrinkled my nose in genuine distaste. Mr. Reese, keep your distance. Your money now is not compensation to me. It is an insuit. Holden froze, his hands suspended in the air like a bewildered child. What do you want me to do? Tell me. I'll do anything if you'll just forgive me. I want you to stay away from me, I said, one word at a
time.
Never appear in front of me again. With that, I turned to leave. Holden chased after me, grabbing my wrist.
Scout, don't go.
It's raining outside.
Let me drive you.
No need. I yanked my hand free and took a folding umbrella from my bag. It was a cheap, ordinary umbrella, slightly battered, the ribs misshapen. But as I opened it, my movements were utterly resolute. Holden, look. I pointed toward the light drizzle outside. The rain stopped a long time ago. Or maybe I've just learned to walk in it. The me of today can afford her own umbrella, and I can pay for my own cab. I don't need your false pity. I walked out of the suite and stepped into the misting rain, without looking back. The next day, the rumors about the reunion ripped through the entire city's elite social circles. Holden and Jen were irrevocably finished. Holden unilaterally announced the end of the engagement, and overnight, pulled all capital and cooperative ventures from the Sinclair family business. The Sinclairs were barely maintaining their respectable facade with Holden's investment. The sudden withdrawal of funds severed their cash flow, sending the family hurtling toward bankruptcy. Jen became the laughingstock of the city. The former high-flying swan was a completely ruined woman. It was said she went to Holden's corporate headquarters and knelt, begging for forgiveness, only to be dragged away by security like a piece of refuse. And Holden? He searched for me like a man possessed. But I was prepared. That same night, I resigned from the club, moved out of the dilapidated apartment, and changed my phone number. I was hoping for a few days of peace. But I had underestimated the power of capital. On the third evening, I saw Holden's black Bentley parked near my new apartment building. He was leaning against the car door, the ground around, his feet littered with cigarette butts. In just 3 days, he looked 10 years older. Unshaven, eyes hollowed, his suit rumpled. Gone was the corporate titan. When he saw me, his eyes instantly lit up. Scout.
His voice was rough, raw. He walked toward me.
Tentatively. I finally found you. I sighed, knowing I couldn't escape him forever. Mr. Reese, what can I do for you? Don't call me Mr. Reese. Call me Holden. He looked at me in agony. I broke off the engagement. I ruined the Sinclairs.
Jen
Has paid the price. Can you give me another chance? I'll transfer all my assets to you, all the company shares.
I
Don't want anything. Just let me stay by your side to make amends. Please. He pulled a thick stack of documents from inside his jacket, his hands trembling as he held them out. These are deeds. This is an equity transfer document, and all my bank cards. The password is your birthday. I looked at the stack of papers, a fortune that would make any normal person faint, and felt absolutely nothing. Holden, do you really believe money can fix everything? I didn't take the documents. I just stared at him coldly. Do you think by destroying the Sinclairs I'm supposed to be moved? That you're doing me a favor? If you truly feel guilty, then stop interrupting my life. That is the only compensation I need from you. I bypassed him, walking toward the entryway. Just as I was about to swipe my key, Jen suddenly lunged from the shadows like a madwoman.
Scout.
You bitch. I'll kill you. She was wielding a fruit knife, aiming it directly at me. Watch out, Holden roared, not thinking for a second, throwing himself in front of me. Holden let out a choked cry, clutching his abdomen as he collapsed. Blood instantly stained his white shirt. Jen was frozen in shock. The knife clattered onto the pavement. I calmly pulled out my phone and dialed 911. Hello, emergency services? I have an assault victim. Here. Yes, and a perpetrator with a weapon. Please send the police as well.
Holden didn't die.
The blade had missed the major organs, but it put him in the ICU for 2 weeks. Jen was arrested for aggravated assault, coupled with the evidence Holden provided of her past fraud and bribery. She would be serving a long sentence. The Sinclair family was completely bankrupt. Jen's father suffered a stroke from the stress, and her mother was hysterical. Karma had run its course. The first thing Holden did after being discharged was come back to me. This time, he didn't mention romance, and he didn't mention love. He simply placed a trust fund document on the table in front of me. Scout, I know you'll never forgive me. His voice was hoarse. I don't dare ask for your forgiveness anymore. But you have to take this money. It's compensation for your father and damages for what you endured. If you don't accept it, I'll donate it or burn it. I looked at the document. $50 million. It was an astronomical sum. Enough for me to live on for several lifetimes. Enough to achieve every dream I deferred. Enough to completely escape my past, desperate life. Should I refuse? For the sake of pride? To prove I didn't care about money?
No.
I wasn't an idiot, and I wasn't a saint. This money was paid for with my father's life and my 7 years of misery. Why should I reject it? Why should I not take the compensation I was owed? Fine. I picked up the pen and signed the document with a decisive flourish. The day after the funds were secured, I resigned. I moved my mother into the finest long-term care facility in the city, hiring 2 full-time nurses. I bought a high-rise apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows, finally able to look down on the city lights instead of having the city crush me. And I finally had the time to fulfill my college dream. I opened my own flower shop. My life was quiet and secure. The only trace of Holden was the occasional snippet on financial news. The report said he had become even more ruthless, a cold-blooded operator in the markets. But privately, he lived like an ascetic monk. He avoided women and social gatherings. When he wasn't working, he was reportedly at church, repenting. Some people said he was losing his mind. Others said he was waiting for a ghost. I knew he would be waiting forever. 6 months later, on a slow afternoon, I was trimming a bouquet in the shop when the bell above the door chimed. Holden stood in the doorway. He was drastically thinner, and his temples were visibly flecked with gray. He looked at me, his eyes greedily tracing every line of my face. Scout, I'm leaving. I'm going to Africa to expand the market. I might never come back. Before I go, I just needed to see you one last time. I put down my shears and looked at him calmly. Have you finished? Then you can leave. Holden managed a bitter half-smile. Do you truly have no trace of nostalgia? Not one good memory? Holden Reese. I sighed, deciding it was time for the absolute final cut. Did you know? I'm engaged. Holden's eyes widened, his face instantly draining of color. What? Who? Dean Kincaid.
No.
I shook my head. He's an ordinary man. A doctor. My therapist, actually.
He
Was the one who pulled me out of the worst of my depression.
He's not as wealthy as you.
He's not as handsome, but he has never once missed my call. He has never handed his phone over to another woman. And he would never, ever let me walk in the rain alone. I was fabricating the entire man. There was no fiancé. But I knew this was the only way to completely extinguish Holden's hope. It worked. Holden backed up 2 steps, leaning against the door frame, tears streaming down his face. I wish you happiness. He managed to force the words out, then turned and fled. Watching his desperate, defeated retreat, I softly whispered a final goodbye. Goodbye, Holden Reese. Forever. 5 years later, Jen, having caused trouble in prison and crossed the wrong person, had her leg broken and was left permanently disabled. The rumor was, on the day of her release, no one came for her. She had to crawl home. Holden died in Africa. It was reported to be from a sudden plague, but many believed it was due to his absolute lack of will to live. He refused aggressive treatment. His will stipulated that all his remaining assets be donated to charity. He established a foundation dedicated to treating cerebral hemorrhage patients, named the Scout Compassion Fund. The attorney delivered his final possessions to me. It was an old cell phone, the one he'd lost 7 years ago. In the Notes app, he had filled the last 7 years with his regrets and longing for me. Scout, it's raining today. I miss you. Scout, I made it, but I'm not happy at all. Scout, I'm so sorry. I glanced at the screen, then tossed the phone into the trash can. He was dead. Who was this performance for? 7 years ago, I might have wept over this. Now, I just found it sentimental and narcissistic. It was a beautiful day. I locked up the flower shop and drove my mother to the coast for a short vacation. On the car stereo, a mournful pop song was playing, the lyrics perfectly encapsulating hindsight. Later, I finally learned how to love. But you were already gone, disappeared into the crowd. I hummed along, feeling an immense, profound sense of relief. My mother smiled from the passenger seat.
Scout, what
are you thinking? You look so happy. I looked at the open, broad highway ahead and smiled back. Nothing, Mom. Just that I think the rain has finally stopped. The sky is clear.
The end.